Hi, welcome to We Read Allegedly, where we are allegedly reading books. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. I'm Squid. This is Celeste.
We still don't have John.
We still don't have John. It's just us. You're stuck with us. Heyo!
John finished school quickly.
Please be done. Hey! Celeste!
Yeah!
We're 2 years old.
Yay!
It's amazing. Hold on. Let's see where we should be developmentally at this time.
Oh.
Let's see. We should be able to notice when other people are upset or hurt, which is something we haven't learned yet.
Nope. Is that why you keep making us read sad books?
We should be able to point at things when we're asked, like, hey, where's the sad thing in this book? And you point at it and it's my book.
Just the whole thing.
Just the whole thing. Say two words at the same time. We should be able to hold something in one hand and use the other hand, which I'm still working on. Kick a ball.
Which is ironic, considering that what you do.
Yeah. You would think that I would be able to use my hands well as an interpreter, but, we should also be able to eat with a spoon. So come back later to see if We Read Allegedly has hit their developmental milestones. We'll be eating and communicating like a pro in no time.
Does that mean that we're entering our terrible twos and we are going to be reading terrible, just books that make us go, ugh?
Maybe. Let's find out if this is one of those books. This month we're reading Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. But before we talk about that, we're going to play a little game. You ready for a game, Celeste?
I am ready for a game.
All right, so we're going to play a game of bookshelf roulette. You've probably all seen this before. You know how it works.
Heard, but yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're watching. Maybe they have synesthesia and they can see the sounds. You never know.
That's fair.
So I'm going to give 3 numbers. The first number corresponds to a corner of your bookshelf. So 1 is bottom left, 2 is top left, 3 is right, so on and so forth, counterclockwise. From whatever corner, the next number will be either up or down on your shelves.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the next number will be that number of books in.
Okay.
From the whatever side. So our numbers are 3, which is the top right corner.
Of course it is.
2, second shelf down.
Oh, thank God.
And 23.
At least I can reach the second shelf down. Okay.
Go.
Be right back. Okay, I am back.
Welcome back. We're ready to find out what we got in our roulette and if it's a book we've actually read.
Maybe.
Lay it on me, Celeste. What do you got?
Okay, I have not read this book.
That's normally what I say when I do this game.
But it is Finger Lickin' 15, which is one of the Stephanie Plum books. Have not made it to 15 yet. The
15's that's up there.
Well, there's a lot of these books. I think I have until 21, and then I have a couple of the in between the numbers storylines. So
this is Janet Ivanovich.
Yes, all of her Stephanie Plum books are numbered. So the first one is 1 for the money, second one's 2 for the show, and then just kind of played on that. Hence the Finger Lickin' 15. She has a couple of Stephanie Plum stories that are in between those stories that they're little mini books. So our library used to, it has not recently because it caught fire. And so they're we can't just get rid of books, but they had been doing a sale where they would every so often they would just sell books that they weren't going to be using anymore. And so I got all of these, 1 through 20 something in the in-betweens from 3 different library sales.
Heck yeah.
And I paid a total of maybe $35.
Which is wonderful. That's beautiful.
Some of them are hardbacks.
Is she also the one that did the A for Alibi series?
Oh, I don't know.
Or is that someone else?
Maybe. So, but I enjoy her book. I say books. I enjoy Stephanie Plum. I enjoyed The One for the Money. I haven't read the rest of them. But it's one of those that you kind of have to be in the mood for it. I am very much a mood reader. I read based on what I want my brain to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And so her books are hysterical, but they're also mysteries. Because Stephanie Plum is a bounty hunter. She works for people who have skipped bail. Well, she doesn't work for the people who skipped bail, but she works for the bail bondsman, for people who have skipped out on their bail. And so, but she's also from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has this like, take no crap, ask no questions. At one point, it is just hysterical, some of the situations she gets into. She's in the first book, and there is a movie on it, so which is much easier to consume, where she's just like, she goes home and someone has been stalking her, and it turns out it's the guy she's trying to bring in for bail.
Oops.
But she's yet to actually catch him. So he doesn't want to hurt her because he's being framed for murder.
Mm-hmm.
And so he handcuffs her to the shower.
As one does.
And then takes her gun and her evidence and then leaves her there.
As one does.
So she's like, crap, I've got to call my landlord. And so it's just, there's a lot of funny things like that. And so it's a humorous book. What did you grab, Squid?
So I got a book that you might be interested in. This is called Thicker Than Water.
What's that about?
It is a collection of essays by adult siblings of individuals with disabilities.
Oh,
so it is.
I would be interested in that.
As soon as that shelf showed up in the numbers, I was like, ho, wait a minute.
This book.
So it's edited and put together by Don Meyer, who is a pretty popular name among the sibling community. So he founded Sib Shops, which, have you ever heard of them?
Mm-mm.
So Sib Shops were something he created that were like area events or like groups of siblings of people with disabilities where they could get together and meet other siblings and kind of like,
okay.
It's geared for a younger audience, like still in school. Yeah. But from that, it has grown into a larger network.
I have heard of that. I've just never heard it called that.
Yeah. So
if that makes sense.
So there's Sib Shops, and then that developed into SibNet, which I'm not sure if it's still called SibNet now. I don't know. I'm on the Facebook group, but it's just like a Facebook group of which is now mostly adult siblings who either get on to talk about struggles, victories, so on and so forth, or seeking advice, as a lot of siblings end up being caretakers or guardians or, like legal representation for their siblings, things like that, where they have to make life choices. So it's a lot of good advice. And this is just essays more about like personal experiences or different things. Not many of them are like life lesson-y. They're mostly just like, hey, here's what I went through. Here's what I thought or felt or did. Some of them are like, this one's called A Letter to My Brother, and she wrote her essay as a letter to her brother that has a special need. A lot of them are just like kind of personal storytelling of things, but it was a very good book. I went through a period where I got everything that Don Meyer was involved in because I was actively involved in ministries devoted to siblings. So I have a lot on my shelf.
Would that be, was it Johnny and Friends?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he also did a book called Sib Shops, and then I think he also did the Sibling Slam book.
That doesn't sound good.
Well, like a slam book was apparently like a thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's kind of like this book, but a younger audience where they just kind of wrote more like a few sentences about like certain topics that were provided on each page. It's an easier read because there's less pages and it's mostly in fun font. But a very good book. Do suggest it. This was right next to Being the Other One on my shelf, which is another good book I really suggest. That one's not a collection of essays. It's just a book about being the other one, quote unquote, and what it is like to be the normal sibling, quote.
Right.
And what that's like and the unique challenges and joys and things you can and can't do.
Right.
Very good. Highly suggested. If anyone out there needs recommendations on books about being a sibling of someone with special needs, you know where to find me.
In the greater Chicago area doing squid things.
Yep. Come to the shed. I might be there.
Maybe. We're not telling you which shed in the greater Chicago area.
Well, there's really only one shed in the greater Chicago area. It's the Shed Aquarium, which is why I suggested that.
Didn't know that. Didn't know that there was an aquarium called the Shed. I thought you were just talking about like a literal shed.
This is shed with 2 D's because it's a man's name. So it's the Shed Aquarium in downtown Chicago. You can catch me there being a squid.
Okay.
Let's talk about a book.
And not Celeste's lack of awareness of what's happening.
That's fine. Okay, so we're reading Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which is now a major motion picture, which I saw at some point. So the description for this book says, 9-year-old Oscar Schell has embarked on an urgent secret mission that will take him through the 5 boroughs of New York. His goal is to find the lock that matches a mysterious key that belonged to his father, who died in the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th. This seemingly impossible task will bring Oscar into contact with survivors of all sorts on an exhilarating, affecting, often hilarious, and ultimately healing journey. So it is not a spoiler that 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know. Surprise.
Or what happened in the aftermath of 9/11 with the world.
Yes. Very key part of this story. I feel like there was... Have you ever seen... This is a tangent. Have you ever seen the movie Remember Me? I think it's Robert Pattinson in it.
Isn't that a Nicholas Sparks book?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a Nicholas Sparks movie.
Probably. I've heard of it.
If it is the one I'm thinking of, it is like this fun little like love story. Things are going wrong and they fall in love. Oh, it's so great. And then the very last shot of this movie, I'm sorry if anyone plans on watching this movie from like 2008, probably, I don't know, is him on September 11th in the window of like his office, and it zooms out and he's in the World Trade Center, and like that's how the movie ends.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, you what? It was probably the most like visceral reaction I've had to the end of a film ever, because I was just like, you can't just do that. You can't do that. He did that. Wasn't great. Didn't like it.
Well, and to be fair, the movie came out in 2010.
Oh, I was close.
So it was only like 9 years later, which seems like a lot, but for such a world-changing event, that's a little fresh.
I'm watching like this love story for the last part of this movie to just be like, also he's about to die in 9/11. I was like, that's not even part of the plot anymore. What's happening?
I mean, okay, so to be fair, I went through a phase where I was reading Nicholas Sparks books because
he does have a pretty formulaic approach.
And that is what he does. He generally does crap like that.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas Sparks. Walk to Remember was a movie I also watched multiple times.
Same. It was a movie that our generation was like, we love it. So this is our generation's females summed up. Okay, so back to this book that we're talking about currently.
Yes. I was trying to remember why I bookmarked some of these pages.
I understand. I didn't bookmark anything. I listened to the audiobook, which was both delightful and heart-wrenching.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's a great description of this book.
Yes.
There are sections of it that are absolutely delightful. And then there are sections that I'm just sitting here going, but why?
Yep. I hadn't read this book prior, because most of my theme this year is just recommending books that I haven't read so that I read them. It's my real method for getting through my backlog. I had seen the movie a long time ago. I think I saw it like right when it came out. Tom Hanks is in it. He plays the dad.
I didn't know what this was about. I had not a clue that this was about 9/11.
Sorry. You learned pretty fast.
It's not a spoiler. I knew that it had something to do with a plane crash, but that was very prevalent in movies when the movie came out. And so it did not click in my brain that it was that plane crash.
Yeah. Yeah. At least because I had seen the movie, I went into knowing that. But
yeah.
So I also found this book heart-wrenching but delightful. I love books that, if they're going to be in first person, make that person a really enjoyable experience to see the world from their perspective. And Oscar sees the world very uniquely.
He does.
It's really fitting that I actually pulled Thicker Than Water, because I don't know that they ever say it in this book, but it is heavily implied he has autism.
Yeah, I've did some research on it because I have a lot of people in my life have autism, or some form of it. And so I was like, this sounds like this. And so I went digging, and basically because of when I was doing it, I hadn't finished the book. It never says that he has autism. It's just heavily implied. Yeah. So, because again, the way his thought processes are.
Yep. His reactions. There's
and the way his mom reacts to him.
Yeah.
She has the reactions of a mom of a special needs kid.
Yeah, she does. Her and the grandma.
Yeah.
Both of them. So his father dies in 9/11. And it's also pretty heavily implied that his father was probably closer to his dad, and they just did a lot of things together. So his father dying was a big shock and your father dying at any time is a big shock, but to be 9 and to have likely this man be a big part of your routine when routine is clearly very important to Oscar. Horrible, terrible, heart-wrenching. Sorry. Book starts sad, and it stays that way for a while.
The switching back and forth between time frames was fascinating to me. So, and the reason I bring that up is because it helped provide some levity, because it starts out as a very, very much a lighter story.
Yeah.
It doesn't end up being a lighter story, but it starts out that way. So in the beginning, when you're coming into the acceptance of this is what this is about, it gives you that moment of reprieve to go,
take a deep breath.
Ooh. So it was fascinating. I enjoy, because it was all in the form of letters. I enjoy books that are done that way.
Wasn't all letters.
That have
may have seemed like letters.
It always seemed like letters to me.
It is him narrating, so you could speculate that he is telling you. But it's not. If you read the physical book, it's not. It doesn't come across that way.
Oh, okay. It always, anytime there was a time jump, the time jump came across as a letter to me. Or a journal entry.
Yeah. Okay.
Like something that was not necessarily sent, but written.
I do. This is one of the books that I'm kind of sad that you did the audiobook, although I'm glad you really enjoyed it, because it is one of those books that has it will finish a portion and then have a blank page and then another blank page and then another blank page and one line of text, because it does do a very good job of visually backing up how Oscar's processing information.
Yeah. They played with that in the audiobook as well. There was times where there would be spaces. Just something would be said, and it took me a minute to catch on to what was happening, and there would be a pause and a chapter and one a sentence, and then there would be another pause. So it maybe didn't.
Some nice pictures too. There's pictures in the book.
What was that?
That's a cat.
Is that what is happening with the cat?
It's probably something that he talked about. Oh, this was the section where he was talking about how if you drop a cat, it won't reach terminal velocity in a way that will kill it.
Because of the way a cat's body moves.
So there's a lot of pictures that just back up different things that he's talking about or how he sees the world.
So it was definitely interesting. I loved Oscar's perspective because it just made sense.
Yeah.
Little dude's very logical.
Yes.
Which is minorly terrifying.
It's on this lovely page where it's just corrections that he makes.
Oh. Yeah, that was also interesting because they were doing a pencil scratch.
Oh. Yeah. That one is a letter.
It would do anytime there was a pencil scratch, you would do the and redo the sentence.
That's good. I like that. I do like when they're able to like capture as well as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. It was enjoyable. It did take me aback the first time because it was like, what's that sound in my ears? But once I realized, I was like, okay, this has a purpose.
Yes.
So
I do think this like did a very good job of, again, not having autism and them never saying he actually has autism. I will not ascribe.
So he might not.
He might not. But his way of processing the world is definitely unique and also very like concrete while not being concrete at all at times. So I found it really interesting. I wrote down 2 specific things, which was like he struggles to understand the difference between like jokes and games versus when they cross the line into like fear or like really tapping into someone else's emotions in a way that he doesn't get.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that happens, it just kind of becomes like this like rote memorization of how he needs to react then, because he doesn't like there's one scene with his mom. So he says something that clearly upsets her and he doesn't like know
what he said,
like why it's upset her or like what it is, which is like from the outside wild, because what he said is like if he could pick, he would pick that she would have died instead of mom, like dad, because he's like, I really miss dad. I wish dad was here. Like, and in his mind, he's probably like, I would like to see dad and mom's mad at me, so dad would be nicer to have in this situation right now.
And he doesn't realize that, like, basically he just wished that his mom would die.
So she, like, goes to just walk away, doesn't say anything because she's, like, upset. And he just goes, I take it back. And she doesn't say anything. He's like, I said I take it back because she's not replying, so clearly she didn't hear me, you know? And she goes,
Yeah.
You can't take something like that back. He goes, can you apologize for something like that? She says nothing, and he says, do you accept my apology? Which I find really interesting because it's also not him apologizing. He just asks if you can, and if she accepts it.
Yeah.
And she's, I don't know. How can you not know? Oscar, I don't know. Are you mad at me? She says nothing. Mom? Yes. Are you still mad at me? No. Are you sure? I was never mad. What were you? And she just replies, hurt. And it's just like, you can very much tell that he's like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand this and why it is happening. But I know what I need to do. And it's that I need to apologize.
Yes.
Kind of.
Clearly I messed up. Let me say I'm sorry. I'll figure it out later. That's like his whole thing. Can we just talk about, though, how his friend, who he doesn't realize is his grandfather, went with him to dig up a grave?
I do. His grandfather is a wild little man.
Sir, you're an adult. Like, you understand that this is not okay, even if he's not there. That whole storyline is wild. I loved the grandfather, though.
Me too. And that story, I feel like the grandma and grandpa story was so good. And I
almost needed just their story. Like, I enjoyed Oscar, and I enjoyed his this, and this. Like, the linear way he thought. I appreciated that. But at the same time, I could have read a book of just the grandparent story.
And I think one of the author's intention, I had a dangerous sentence to say because you never know what their intention is. But I think it's pretty obvious to the way that he's written this book that he has intentionally chosen a character that really doesn't see the world through other people's perspectives and struggles to do that, and then has written a book about humanizing other humans to him. Just like putting him in direct contact with all these people that have pasts and hurts and feelings and thoughts and opinions that are wildly different from Oscar's. And he has to learn how to deal with that, good, bad, and ugly, which all happens. You know, even just the conversation he has when he meets... So he has a key, to back this up. He has a key, and he's looking for where the key goes because he thinks it's a puzzle that his father has left for him. And in the process, he meets a bunch of different people, one of which is a woman that's like in the midst of a divorce and has like...
But you don't know it.
Like, you don't really... Like, she's struggling and she's having a bad time, and he's thinking wildly different things than she is. But through them talking, you learn a lot about both of them and about her, where she's at.
It did a good job of going, let me not show this to you or tell this to you, but let me show you, which was fascinating to have done with the very blunt voice of Oscar.
Which I think helps.
You understand that he doesn't understand what he's saying, but he's still giving you enough context that you can go, I understand this. I know what's happening.
Which in a lot of ways, it's definitely not a book about Oscar learning how other people think. It's more like about you starting in Oscar's position and being like, okay, I understand how Oscar thinks. And then taking yourself back out of Oscar's thinking patterns to be like, oh yeah, other people with thoughts and feelings, and Oscar, why aren't you noticing? But also, Oscar, I understand why you're not noticing, and like all the different sides of everything that's happening. Everything. There's a lot that's happening.
There's a lot that happens in this.
The old man with the pennies. Also a great character. He's the guy upstairs, the apartment upstairs that like doesn't leave his house. Oh,
yes.
Wonderful person. So many of the stories that you learn are just like, oh, my heart.
Like, it's just, at the same time, it's also a good look into New York itself. So, because especially New York post 9/11.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, like, I mean, I don't know, but I am sure that there is a difference.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you were in New York, which I don't know if he is a New York native. He lives in Brooklyn. So I imagine maybe he was there for quite some time. It's just definitely different than any of our perspectives looking at it. For sure.
Right.
One of the interesting lines. This is just an interesting line that I found because his grandma buys him stamps because he wants to start a stamp collection.
Yes.
And she was like, well, I just want you to have, a wonderful start so you can have a wonderful beginning. And she got him a sheet of stamps of great American inventors. And she says, you've got Thomas Edison, she said, pointing to one of the stamps, and Ben Franklin, Henry Ford, Eli Whitney, Alexander Graham Bell, George Washington Carver, Nikola Tesla, whoever that is, the Wright brothers, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Oscar goes, who's he? She goes, he invented the bomb. Which bomb? The bomb. He goes, he wasn't a great inventor. And she said, great, not good. And I really liked that line because it was like, it helps to separate that.
Yeah, because you can be great at something, but you can...
He was indeed not phenomenal at inventing.
Not think about the repercussions.
Go see Oppenheimer.
Or go listen to our conversation about Frankenstein.
Hey, or that. That's probably better to drum up business for us, but also Oppenheimer did come out. So you can watch that too if you want.
I still need to watch the second part of that, which is Barbie.
The second part of
Barbieheimer. Yep.
It's not as good.
I've been told. That's why I haven't watched it.
I know a lot of people that really, really enjoyed it, and I finished and went, I really, really didn't. But I'll be here to talk about it when you're done.
I don't know when.
That's fine. You know what? Hopefully I'll still be here when you're done.
That's fair.
I don't know when that'll be, but I hope I'm still around.
My brain's just gone now.
Do you have any,
I don't know what's happening.
This might end up being a short episode because it's us just being like, hey, we both liked this book. This is why we need John. If John were here, he would be like, this book was too sad and I didn't like it.
This is why starting out from this point forward, we're going to try to at least every once in a while have a third person.
Yes, so they can at least provide something new other than
so
us.
That it's not just Squid and us and I. Squid
and us. Ooh. Me, myself, and I.
Screaming into the void about a book. Yes.
I did.
Because I feel like you and I are very interesting, but we're not very interesting to other people.
To speak for yourself.
On a podcast. We need the third person in there to add the new perspective. Because the referee or the opposing.
Yes.
Because
we either really agree or we really don't. We don't.
Yes, there is no in between.
We don't middle a lot. I will say in a very controversial statement that this is a very good pairing to read with Let the Great World Spin, both of which are about New York and connections of people. And just because you didn't like Let the Great World Spin because you thought it was sad and depressing,
it just
they're both about human nature and human connectedness.
Let the Great World Spin was boring.
Oh, it was fun to read physically. I don't know.
I had no interest in the majority of the characters.
That's fair.
This book I did. I do not have a spiritual speculation on it. I was too busy trying to deal with my own emotions for the
crying.
roller coaster that was this book. Because again, it goes back and forth between super heavy and super light. And then you realize about, I don't know, a third of the way through that the super light stuff is not super light. You realize that like his inventions, he's inventing things, but his inventions are anxiety. And it's so you realize that this is not this is not a good, I mean, it's good, but it's not like there isn't anything necessarily super light unless it's that old man.
What a guy. I don't know that what I'm about to say is going to end up being a spiritual speculation because I haven't prepared one. But I realized I didn't talk about this portion of the book that made me really happy in a way that was also about like Oscar not fully understanding why other people do the things they do or why he should do what they ask of him, which in and of itself I can turn into a spiritual speculation after I explain this portion of the book, which is that his grandma looks after him a lot. They spend a lot of time together. He often calls her his best friend. And there's a portion where she comes over and had stayed at the apartment for a week after his father passed. And she goes looking for him and he's hiding because he thinks it'll be funny. And so she's like yelling his name and yelling his name and yelling his name and can't find him. And he's like, well, once we crack up at the end, it'll be so funny. And then when he finally does come out, she is so mad, like leaves the house, goes home, is so angry, and then turns it into what is later a game, because a game is something he understands, where anytime she says his name, he has to respond, I'm okay.
I don't know if she turned it into a game or if he did. Because
a bit of both. Because she said we play a game like Marco Polo.
Gotcha. I understood it as she said something about, I just needed to know you were okay.
Yes.
And he took that to mean that every time she called his name, he said, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think she does explain that later because there is a portion that made me want to weep when they talked about this. And it was like the week that her son had died. And just this constant, like, I think it mentions like her constantly waking up and being like, is he here still? Like, is he just not where I thought he was?
Which that is a part of grief that is prevalent. And so that was I appreciated that was in there because that's not something that people talk about.
Just the varieties of grief too, because you have a woman who's lost a son.
Yeah.
Taking care of her grandson, a mom who's lost, or a wife who's lost a husband who also still has a family she needs to take care of, which is not easy because her son is constantly saying things that are hurtful. Whether or not he realizes it, still hurtful.
And then roaming around New York.
And then running around the city and lying to her. But there is the mentality of a lot of the things that Oscar does where he doesn't quite understand, but he knows he should. I feel like there are a lot of things that we as Christians don't necessarily fully understand, but we know we should. So sometimes you can indeed fake it until you make it, a saying that gets said a lot in our house. We don't always know why we should pray. Sometimes you can just pray and maybe not know why you're doing it. And that's, as Oscar would say, okay. You can do that. So you don't always have to feel like you know or understand or fully grasp why you are doing these things that you are called to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can just refuse to do them and be like, actually, I'm going to do what I want instead. I'm going to hide because God will think it'll real funny at the end when I tell him that it was a joke.
He'll think it's real funny when I tell him I ate that apple.
Yeah. He'll think this is such a good joke and we'll all laugh about it later.
It'll be great. So
that's what I got.
I struggle with that concept though, because I like to understand. So the concept that someone wouldn't get why like we should pray, because that's the example you used. I'm like, you find out. You go find answers.
Well, I think it also applies kind of like,
or you ask, or you,
especially in the realm of like feelings, because a lot of times it will be like, well, I don't feel like doing this.
Now, I will give you that. Yeah. That like, there's definitely been times where I did not feel like doing the spiritual disciplines.
Yes. But it's a discipline for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because it's punishment.
Anyway.
Because it's practice. Like,
yeah. So, yeah, that makes more sense to me.
And there are certain things, certainly about our walk, that we will never understand. Or perhaps, in its full realm, because we will never be God. Even in glory, we'll not understand. But some things that we will understand better. But sometimes you just got to do the things and not understand why, except to say that because it's pleasing to the Lord. So,
and even if there is an answer, but you know that it's a thing you're supposed to do, like keep doing it while you're seeking for answers.
And indeed, if you don't feel like doing it, sometimes you just have to do it anyway and not feel it for a while. And sometimes habit will help develop that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Woohoo! Okay, so I'm gonna just say it.
All right,
because I think we're done.
I think so.
Are we done? Okay. Well, until next time. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Bye.
Bye.
We Read Allegedly is part of the Devoted Geeks Network, devoted to letting you know that you're loved. If you like what you hear, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This month, we read Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, but you can join us next month as we read Middle Passage by Charles Johnson, and welcome a special guest to the podcast. We'll see you then. Soon I will have authority, and I can just say, you have to read this now. I think that's how marriage works.